Best friend accused me of manipulation and overshadowing her wedding because of my pregnancy, then ghosted me after my miscarriage. I'm 31 and my best friend, also 31, had been a pillar in my life for over 12 years. We met as college roommates, bonded through the chaos of those formative years, and even though we've spent most of our friendship 1,300 miles apart, we always seemed to find our way back to each other no matter what life threw at us. She was there when I needed to escape an abusive home at 20, and a few years back when I spiraled deep into depression and needed inpatient treatment, she never left my side. I'd tried my best to be there for her, too, through every heartbreak, every friend betrayal, her father nearly dying from COVID, the loss of her beloved pets. Ours wasn't just a friendship, it was a lifeline threaded through grief, fear, and love. But time changes people. We grew from wild 19-year-olds into real adults with full, messy lives. She's done things that hurt and confused me, but I did my best to move on. Like when I turned 30, I planned a trip to Disney World with my family. Disney was sacred to both of us. My birthday falls a week after hers, so when I told her months before that I'd be in Disney for my birthday, she broke down crying. She couldn't handle that I'd be there on her birthday even though I wasn't going to the parks that day, and we had no plans to see each other. She disappeared 4 days, inconsolable, until her now fiancé decided the only way to fix it was to max out a credit card and take her to Disney himself 6 months before me. That's where they got engaged. I was confused and honestly hurt, but if that was what she needed, then fine. I left it alone. We had rough patches before. I remember last year after I lost my job, my mental health crashed so hard that I leaned way too much on her. I got too dark, trauma dumped and strained our friendship, which I admitted and apologized for. I worked through it in therapy, clawed my way back, and eventually we found our rhythm again. I'm not perfect, none of us are, but I always tried to recognize my faults and do better. For over a year now, I've been healthier than ever, more therapy, better mental health, and, honestly, a better partner and friend to the people I love. Now, here's where it gets messy. I've been married for nearly 7 years. She was my maid of honor. I've always wanted kids, always made that clear, and she's never wanted any, which is fine. My husband and I started trying a year or 2 ago, but after I lost my job, we paused. I found work again, things stabilized, and we decided to start trying for a baby in October of 2024. She knew all of this. I live in a state where abortion is completely illegal, which raised our urgency a bit. We wanted 2 kids, but new risks go up as you get older, and with the law being what it is, I didn't want to try past 35 if we could help it. She's been engaged nearly 2 years. Her wedding is later this year, and I was to be her maid of honor just as she was for me. Then, on January 2nd, I found out I was pregnant. My husband and I were overjoyed. Finally, some good news. Naturally, I told my sister, then her. In my mind, if something went wrong, the unthinkable, the heartbreaking, my sister and my best friend would help pick up the pieces. She answered the phone and immediately her first words were, "So, when are you due?" She went straight to discussing her wedding, asking if I'd still be pregnant for it. My due date was about 6 weeks before her wedding, but I could hear it in her voice she was upset. My old trauma kicked in, and I shifted to people-pleasing mode. I tried to reassure her, babbling about how the timing wasn't perfect for me either, how it sucked that September has so many birthdays in my family, and tried to ease her concerns. I even asked if she was mad at me because deep down, I knew she was. She ghosted me for 4 days, barely texting back, being cold and distant, the opposite of the friend I needed. Finally, after days of stress, she called and I spent an hour and a half soothing her, promising nothing would change, that I'd still be at her wedding, the only difference being I might be waddling down the aisle in postpartum diapers under my maid of honor dress. We weren't planning a wild, boozy Vegas bachelorette. I didn't see how having a 6-week-old at the wedding would even be a big deal. My family, my husband's family, were all hands on, baby care wouldn't be a problem. I practically begged her to believe me, to accept my apology, for adding a wrench into her wedding plan. The next day, our friendiversary, a date I never forget, she texted me, wanting another follow-up call. This time, she said her fiancé couldn't handle the news and needed me to talk him down like I had with her. I felt my whole body recoil. I love her, but I could not spend another 90 minutes coddling her fiancé's feelings about my pregnancy. He isn't my best friend. So I told her, gently, I didn't know what else I could say. She shot back that she didn't feel like my husband and I considered her wedding when we decided to go for it, that I wasn't being realistic about what I'd be able to do. When I told my best friend I was pregnant, I never expected it would lead to the unraveling of a 12-year friendship. She told me that 2025 was supposed to be her year, the year she'd get married, and expressed that she didn't want my pregnancy to overshadow her wedding. According to her, people automatically think a pregnancy is more important than a wedding, and now that I'm pregnant, her special year is in jeopardy. I was stunned. For one, we don't even share the same groups of friends or family. In all honesty, I would never expect her to pause her own life, just because I was going through a major event. Yet, she essentially told me that I should have put my life on hold so 2025 would be devoted entirely to her and her fiancé. That hit me hard, and I told her so. I admitted her reaction made me regret even telling her about the pregnancy, and at that moment, I felt sorry to be pregnant at all. I mentioned that, as a woman in my state, it's risky just to exist, and asking me to press pause on my hopes for a family, just for her wedding, was deeply unfair. I tried to reason with her, explain that best friends often go through big life changes together in their 30s, weddings, babies, new jobs, moves, even divorces. We're supposed to be able to celebrate each other's wins, even simultaneously. It doesn't take away each other's shine. She said she needed to process and couldn't respond yet. I told her to take her time, and that I'd be here when she was ready. Just 2 days later, my world collapsed. I miscarried. It was, without a doubt, one of the worst experiences of my life. I'm still not over it. I cry when I think about the baby I lost and carry the terrifying fear I'll never have a family. The grief is a wound I know I'll always carry. At 4 a.m. As I was miscarrying, bleeding heavily in the bathroom, shaking and terrified, I texted her. I told her what I thought was happening, but that I didn't want to talk about it. Really, I didn't trust her with my vulnerability anymore, not after her reaction to my pregnancy news. Honestly, I don't know why I even reached out, but in that horrifying, lonely moment, I wanted to tell my best friend. She didn't reply until 2:30 p.m. the next day. It was just a generic message. Basically, I didn't know what to say. If you think this is happening, I'm sorry. I didn't answer. Truthfully, I didn't talk to anyone the day I was still bleeding, still scared, grieving both my baby and my own health. She never checked in again. Not that evening, not the next day. Nothing. She never asked how I was, never checked on my husband, who is also her friend and seemed to have just checked out completely. 3 days after that, my OB did an ultrasound and confirmed the loss. Heartbroken, I shared on my social media that I had miscarried. I've always been open about my struggles and mental health. When I went through treatment years ago, I shared it, and I continue with that honesty here. It wasn't about my friend at all, it was a way for me to speak the truth and help remove the shame. She saw my post. I know because I could see her profile viewed my story. Yet again, there was no text, no call, nothing. Now, weeks have passed. For over 2 weeks, not a single word. We used to talk daily, and suddenly, she's ghosted me completely right when I've needed my best friend the most, as I face the worst thing I've ever experienced. Today, I texted her, "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but your silence for 2 weeks has been really upsetting. I gave you space to figure out a response, but now I'm confused why it's taking this long. I'll be here when you're ready." And then the messages came pouring in from her, accusing me of manipulation, saying I was love bombing her. She seemed to think me coddling her about my pregnancy was a form of control, claiming I was always the victim and she was always the bad guy. I'm left reeling. I don't know how I'm manipulating her. Was I wrong for getting pregnant? Should I have kept it a secret from someone I called my best friend? I'm just confused and so angry, searching for clarity, for answer it, because right now, I don't know what I did wrong at all. Update 1. It's been over a year since everything unfolded, and as I look back, I still feel the shock lingering from that night when I sent what became my final message to her. I poured my heart out, telling her how hurt I was by the way she'd been treating me and how much I wanted to work things out before her wedding. I had this hopeful determination that we could fix it, that the years of friendship would count for something. But that message, I'm not even sure if she ever read it. With both of us on iPhones, my text normally turned blue, but that one stayed black forever. Maybe she blocked me so quickly, I never even had a chance. Wherever she could cut ties with me, she did. Social media, Steam, everything. There was nothing left. She was just gone, like I'd become invisible or suddenly stopped existing. The very thing she'd been afraid of, that I'd miss her wedding because of my pregnancy, came true, but not the way either of us expected. I haven't heard her voice, seen her name pop up, or gotten a single word from her since January 2025. It's like 12 years of friendship vanished in an instant. The ache comes in waves, huge, crushing ones at first, but they are softer now, more bearable with every new day. Therapy has helped, and my husband and family have been anchors during this strange grieving for someone who's still out there, living her life without me. I tried to understand, to make sense of how she saw our friendship as unsalvageable, but I'm left with questions and fragments of old conversations. I know she got married. I wasn't there. I'll never really understand why she made the choice she did, or how it all unraveled so quickly. But this past year became a test of my strength, a year of losses and reckoning. I went through the heartbreak of miscarriage, the loss of my biological mother, and the devastation of being laid off. And I went through all of it without her, just cold silence where she used to be. But I survived. I found myself turning to older friends, testing the roots of connections I thought had faded, and found support and love unexpected. Now, with the most incredible uncertainty, the best update of all is that my rainbow baby is due at any moment now. After fearing that losing my first baby meant I'd never have another, this little girl is about to change everything. I am sad that my daughter will never know the person who was such a big part of my life, and maybe even more sad that my former best friend will never know the joy my daughter will bring. But as hard as it is, I'm certain that I don't want anyone in my daughter's life who doesn't really love her, who isn't wholly present. And right now, that means we move forward without her. Even the stress of job loss and pregnancy all at once somehow feels less overwhelming now, as if I'm finally seeing a shaft of light at the end of this tunnel. I have a final interview for a new job this week, one that'll start just as soon as I've recovered from bringing my rainbow girl into this world. For the first time in so long, I feel like things are finally falling into place. Update 2. I'm writing this one hand in a 2-4 ma. M. With a 7-pound furnace asleep on my chest, little breaths fogging my shirt. She's here. She took her time and then arrived like a thunderclap. My water broke on a Wednesday morning while I was cutting up peaches, and by dinner time I was bargaining with my own body under fluorescent lights. It wasn't the birth I'd pictured. Her heart rate dipped twice, the room filled in that scary way where everyone looks calm but moves fast, and I learned how every prayer I've ever said lies in a single word: please. They brought her to me crying and slaken perfect, and I swear the universe exhaled. I did, too. The hospital room felt like a little universe, the kind where time slips and stretches. Day was night was day. We kept her hat on even when she protested. I cried the first time her fingers wrapped around just one segment of my pinky. My husband learned how to swaddle like a magician. At one point, while I was in triage swaying through a contraction, my phone rang with a number I didn't know, HR from the job. She started with, "Do you have a minute?" And I said, "I'm actually about to have a person," and then we both laughed. She told me I aced the final interview. They held the offer until I was home and we'd slept for more than a handful of minutes strung together. I signed in a dim nursery with a baby sleeping beside me, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt like a door I could choose to walk through, not a hallway I had to survive. Somewhere in the delirium of those first days, a message slid into my request from a familiar last name. Her sister. I stared at it for an hour before opening it, felt that old tremor of bracing, of waiting for the blow. It wasn't a blow. It was 3 sentences, halting and gentle, saying congratulations, that she'd seen the picture of our girl and she looked like sunlight, and then careful, like setting something heavy on soft earth, she told me my former best friend had been pregnant, too. Back then. When all of it was splintering. That she lost the baby the same week I did, and had emergency surgery after a complication. She didn't ask me to write back. She said she thought I deserved to know. I sat on the floor beside the bassinet and cried until I hiccuped. It split something open and healed something else at the same time. I had been walking around with this broken, jagged story about being discarded for a party, a dress, a timeline. Maybe that was always too simple. Grief is a wild animal and some people try to throw it a leash that chokes everyone in the room. It explains the silence, the way she cut the strings between us with dull scissors that left everything messy and frayed. It doesn't undo the way she let me bleed alone. 2 things can be true at once, and both of them can hurt. I didn't respond. Not because I'm angry, anger burned itself out a while ago, but because holding a sleeping infant teaches you the value of stillness. I thought about every version of us that ever existed, about how there was a time when I would have been the first person in her passenger seat with a bag of drive-through fries and a bad playlist and no plan except being there. And then I thought about the woman I am now, and the way I promised myself that my daughter will grow up watching me choose people who would choose me back. I folded my phone face down and leaned over my girl and watched her eyelashes flutter. I chose that. There have been tiny miracles tucked into the brutal parts. My milk came in the same day the offer letter arrived, and there was something so perfectly absurd about printing benefits paperwork with a sleeping newborn on my shoulder. My dad fixed our broken dryer while we were still in the hospital, left us a note on the kitchen counter that just said, "She's everything." On our 3rd night home, my husband put on a song I used to love in college and we slow danced around a pile of burp rags, whisper singing so we wouldn't wake her. I caught my reflection in the microwave door and realized I was smiling without noticing. A package showed up yesterday, no return address, my name written in handwriting I could pick out of a lineup. Inside was a small box with tissue paper and a familiar, blue ribbon. 4 Polaroids from our freshman year were tucked inside, the ones we used to keep on our dorm mirror: Halloween cat ears and bad eyeliner, the first snow, coffee at 2 a.m. Faces squished together and almost unrecognizable because of how young we were. There was a bracelet I'd forgotten about, the one I wore as her maid of honor in my wedding. No note. I sat at the table with a baby snuffling against my collarbone and held the pictures like they might crack if I breathed too hard. It felt like a door left unlocked, but still closed. I put the ribbon in a keepsake box with the hospital bracelet and our girl's first hat. I kept the Polaroids. I'm allowed to love who we were and still know we don't get to be that again. Today, onto the easy disaster of bottles and laundry, I started onboarding for the new job. The first Zoom was a parade of names and boxes and the kind of awkward laugh everyone does when someone forgets to unmute. No unexpected ghosts popped up in a little square. I closed my laptop and fed my daughter and watched a rainstorm slide down the window, and everything felt quiet in my bones for the first time in what feels like years. I can't tell you if she meant the package's piece or punctuation. Maybe both. I can tell you that I held my daughter up to the light and told her we're going to be okay, that her first word might be dog or ball or chaos, but her second is going to be boundaries. I don't know what happens next in their house, or in the rooms where my name is or isn't spoken. I know what's happening in mine. We sleep in small stretches, we love in big ones, and the future keeps arriving whether anyone is ready or not. And right now, somehow, I am. Update 3. 3 months later and my daughter has cheeks like ripe peaches and a laugh that shows up like a hiccup, sudden and involuntary, contagious in a way that feels like witchcraft. Work asked me to fly out for a client summit in Orlando and every part of me wanted to say no, but the offer came with a suite big enough for a pack and play and my husband said, let's turn it into something soft. We packed more tiny socks than any one person could reasonably need and flew south, the baby snoring through takeoff like she was born for airplanes. My mornings there were all lanyards and coffee and paper cups that tasted vaguely like printer ink. In the in-betweens, I learned the art of pumping behind a locked conference room door with a blazer shoved under the handle and a calendar block that said focus time. On the last day, with the sessions finally over and the rain clearing and that Florida way steam rising off the pavement like breath, we walked into Epcot because we could. We didn't have a plan beyond find shade and don't melt. The baby wore a tiny sun hat she hated and fell asleep instantly in the carrier anyway. I heard my name the way only one person ever said it, like a nickname and a dare. I turned and it was her. She looked like herself and also like someone whose life had been put through a wringer, smaller somehow, but sharper. New lines at the corners of her eyes that weren't aged so much as stories. Her husband hovered a few feet back with a pretzel. My husband froze and then did the kindest thing. He pretended to see a bird that needed urgent pointing out and walked toward the lagoon. We stood there with France on one side and the UK on the other, and a saxophone version of a movie song floating on the breeze, and I felt 19 and 32 at the same time. She said hi like a question. I said it back like a period. We sat on a bench in the shade of a lopsided palm and she reached into her tote and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. I sent the Polaroids, she said, but this was stuck in a box in our linen closet. I didn't find it until last week. Inside the paper was the little silver castle charm we bought freshman year with tip money we didn't have, swearing we were going to put it on a bracelet for the first baby of whoever got there first. I cupped it in my hand and felt all 20 versions of us inside that stupid tiny thing. She didn't ramble. She didn't try to make a speech. She told me she mailed the package. She told me her sister had messaged me. Then she told me the parts there weren't words for last year anyway: the hemorrhage, the midnight, the surgery that ended with the doctor using phrases like reduced chances and we'll have to see, in a kind of cold future that can't be metabolized in a single afternoon. I didn't know how to watch you get what I wanted while mine was, she gestured at the air between us, a broken wing. So I made you the villain because it was easier than being nobody's hero. I convinced myself you were trying to take my year because the truth was unbearable. It wasn't about your baby. It was about mine that wasn't. I believed her. That's the worst and weirdest part. Not because it made any of it less cruel, and not because it turned me into some kind of saint. I believed her because I could see the holla she'd been dragging. Two things can be true at once and still not be an invitation. The baby woke up then, did that newborn stretch that starts in the hands and goes right through the spine, and made a noise like a question mark. My former best friend's face did something I'd never seen it do before. She had taught me how to parallel park, how to make rice without ruining it, how to sneak snacks into a movie theater in a winter coat. I had never seen her look like she was praying just to be in the same oxygen as a small person. She looked at me and said, "Can't I?" and then stopped herself so hard you could feel the brakes squeal. I shook my head. Not unkindly. Just steady. Not today, I said. Maybe not for a long time. She's not armor. I hand people to make this easier. Her mouth trembled once and then she did something I didn't expect at all. She nodded. Okay, she said. That little word landed like a gift because a year ago there would have been bargaining, theater, a hurricane. This was just okay. We didn't solve it there under the palm tree with the stroller wheels creaking and a parade of families in matching t-shirts popping by. She told me she's in therapy. She told me she keeps trying not to build altars to pain. She said she had a chair with my name on it at the reception no one sat in and that she hated that as soon as she saw it, she hated herself for needing it. She told me she's not sure she wants me back in her life but she thinks she wants me to know she knows what she did. I told her I am sorry we both lost babies. I told her I hope she heals. I told her the castle charm was always going to end up with me, we just didn't know why. There were 3 hard pauses where either of us could have asked for coffee or closure and neither of us did. Her husband came back with a plastic cup sweating in his hand and all 3 of us did the awkward choreography of past, present, and politeness. My husband returned with a photo of a particularly aggressive duck and a look that said say when and I'll roll this stroller away, like it's contraband. We stood up and when I slipped the little silver castle into my pocket it made the tiny knock sound against my phone that felt like punctuation. That night we took the baby to see the fireworks even though every parent blog says don't. We put giant earmuffs on her and she fell asleep anyway, a small person ignoring spectacle because her whole life is spectacle and she has standards. Across the lagoon, somewhere in the dark cloud of people, I knew 2 silhouettes who used to be my left and right hand existed, watching the same sky blow itself to pieces for the sake of beauty. I didn't miss them then. I miss them like you miss a house you lived in a decade ago, a fondness that doesn't make you want to move back in. The next morning, before our flight, my phone buzzed with a calendar reminder I forgot I set for myself last year, first day back in the world. I laughed in the airport bathroom with the paper towels that feel like friendly sandpaper and told my reflection, okay. On the plane, a woman across the aisle knit a sweater with lemon yellow yarn and when the baby started fussing during descent, she handed me a row counter and made shushing noises that sounded like the ocean. It struck me then how many strangers had held me up in tiny ways since January, how I'd been trying to rebuild the entire bridge and all I really needed were the planks right under my feet. We got home to a package on the porch. No return address again, but this time the handwriting wasn't hers. Inside was a paperback about gardens with a postcard as a bookmark. The postcard was a picture of a wrought iron gate with morning glories threaded through it. On the back were 4 words, plant what loves you. No signature. I stood in my kitchen with the dishwasher humming its tired hymn and the baby asleep on my chest, and put the postcard on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a star I took from our dorm room 12 years ago. I don't know if the book was from her sister or my aunt or the universe itself IRUSPs. I know I'm going to figure out where to build my garden, and who gets a key to the gate. A weird epilogue to Orlando. 2 days after we got home, my boss forwarded me an email from the client with one line that made me snort, laugh and then cry. Your speaker kept her camera on during a pumping session and somehow made it feel like leadership. I'm not out here trying to be a symbol. I'm just here trying to do the work with a 7-pound editor asleep on my chest and a heart that's taller than it used to be. The castle charm is on a chain now, not on her, on me. It touches my collarbone when I breathe. It's not a promise. It's a reminder. Update 4. The garden started as a dare from a postcard and a stubborn part of me that hates being told what to do by paper. I dug up a patch of yard the size of a beach towel with a shovel that looked embarrassed of itself and planted zinnias like I knew what I was doing. Morning glories on a trellis that was really just 2 stakes and hope. The baby ate a fistful of dirt and grinned, which felt like a blessing if you squinted. By July, our little square of earth was showing off. The zinnias were shouting in colors no one asked them to use, and the morning glories found the trellis like destiny. I watered at dusk with my daughter strapped to me, the hose making a rainbow I didn't earn, and thought, okay. I can plant what loves me. The hospital 2 neighborhoods over announced they were building a remembrance garden for pregnancy and infant loss, tucked into the courtyard where the cafeterias meet the chapel. A friend forwarded the flyer like it might be too hot to hold. Volunteers welcome, it said. Bring gloves. Bring a story if you want. I read it standing at the sink with a sippy cup in one hand and felt my heart do that tiny tilde compass does when you turn your wrist. I signed up before I could make a pro-con list, before I could invent 12 reasons not to go. The morning I went, the air was all damp heat and cicadas doing their opinionated choir. My husband kissed the top of my head, kissed our daughter's eyebrows one at a time like they were buttons you press for luck, and said text me pictures of the plant so I can't pretend I'm helping. I wore the castle charm and my oldest sneakers. I brought a flat of seedlings that felt on the nose even as I carried them forget-me-nots, Allison, baby's breath because irony is a language my grief speaks fluently. If this were a movie, I wouldn't have been surprised to see her there. But it wasn't a movie, it was a Saturday, and still there she was. A gray t-shirt darkening under the arms, hair up, the kind of face you make when you've already cried in the car and decided not to again. Her sister was beside her, hands on a box of mulch like a peace offering. We made eye contact and both of us flinched in that reflexive, mammal way. Then we both did something younger versions of us never would have done, we nodded. Not a truce. An acknowledgement. I'm not a ghost, you're not a monster. We're two women in a garden with dirt under our nails. The ordinator was a woman in scrubs who said, we're going to make something beautiful out of what we didn't get to keep, and handed out trowels like communion. No one went around sharing their tragedies into a microphone, thank God. People just knelt and worked. Names on small wooden markers bloomed like shy things along the paths. There were stones with dates. There were blank ones, too, for the babies who were our only possibility. I planted my flat in a curve along the far edge, that place where the shade and sun make a handshake. I didn't write a name. I pressed a tiny shell into the soil instead, a pearly thing we picked up at a lake last month, and whispered a word that isn't a name but is mine to keep. Across the pass, she was tucking lavender in by the bench, slow and careful, like someone learning a new prayer. We didn't talk until we both reached for the same pitcher of water and did that little dance humans do when we forget we have elbows. Our fingers brushed and we both laughed one sharp, surprise note. She said, "Hi," again, like she did in Epcot, but this time it didn't sound like a question or a test. It sounded like syllables you put between a history and a future so they don't crash into each other too hard. I brought these, she said, and held up a packet of seeds. Milkweed. For monarchs. I read they like the mess at the edges. Same, I said, and heard how it landed, and we both smiled without letting it be a joke. I thought that would be it. Then the sky did the thing it does in our state where it goes from bright to biblical. The first crack of thunder was a punchline with bad timing. The second and everyone moving. We hustled trays onto the canopy, pulled soil bags over piles like blankets. A gust lifted a stack of paper name markers then pinwheeled them into the air little white flags, surrendering. There was a spasm of hands and gasps and grab what you can. One shot toward the koi pond like destiny. I moved without thinking, and so did she. I caught the marker, she caught my elbow. Her grip was strong and then gone in a blink, like she remembered the boundaries mid-touch. We got soaked. We laughed, because sometimes your body makes the sound before your brain asks permission. When the worst of it had passed and the rain softened into something the plants would brag about later, the ordinator asked if anyone wanted to say words. No one moved. Then a woman in a denim jacket talked about daughter born sleeping. A man in a baseball cap said his wife was still at home because it's too much, but he came anyway. Then, somehow, with my hair dripping on my collar and a streak of mud across my shin like I was trying to contour with soil, I heard my voice. I don't have a speech, I said, which is what people say when they absolutely do not have a speech. I just wanted to say thank you for building a place where grief gets to be something other than the loudest thing in the room. Where it can just be planted. And maybe come back as something that climbs. I looked down while I said it, at the half moons of dirt under my nails, because eye contact turns my bones to science experiments. I didn't look for her. I didn't need to. After, people drifted to the tables for warm lemonade and cookies, the exact texture of a childhood memory. I was peeling a label off a bottle like it had personally wronged me when she stepped into the slice of shade I was hogging. My therapist says I should practice saying a thing once and then letting it exist without building a shrine to it, she said. So. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I made of you to avoid what was happening to me. I'm sorry I didn't show up when you were bleeding. I'm sorry I mailed artifacts like I was curating a museum of us instead of calling like a person. I let each sentence land. I didn't pet them or kick them, just watched how they behaved on the ground between us. My body is different now, she said, touching her stomach the way you touch a book you've read to the end and didn't like the last chapter of. We don't know what's next. We don't know if there is a next. I keep trying to make peace with the blank. I know a little about blanks, I said. The rain made a pulse in the gutter. Somewhere a kid squealed like joy had been invented that second. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to be fought over. I want a life that doesn't hurt on purpose. She nodded. Me too. Okay, I said. We stood there in that dumb hospital courtyard in wet clothes, and this was the part in every version of us where one person would say come over or let's get coffee or do you want to hold the baby, and then we'd try to staple the past to the present. I didn't. Neither did she. It felt like a miracle masquerading as restraint. We went back to our plots and pressed roots into earth. When I got to my car, there was an envelope tucked under the wiper. My name in her handwriting I could pick out even if the letters were asleep. Inside was a photocopy of a page from some book with an underlined line that said, "In the end, we are inventorying what we can carry without breaking." Under it, her words. "I don't know if we get to be friends. I do know that if there's a fence between us now, I'm willing to tend my side and wave. If you ever want milkweed for your edges, I've got a lot. Hey. No ask. Note number. Just that." On the way home, the baby fell asleep, two teeth-like exclamation points in her pink mouth. A monarch landed on the windshield when I stopped at a light, orange as a warning and a promise. I watched it ride the glass, a tiny hitchhiker, and when the light changed, it lifted and went its own way. I didn't cry. I did not cry. I breathed like someone who had been underwater and just now remembered how the surface works. Back in the kitchen, I put the envelope on the counter next to the postcard with the gate and the magnet star from our dorm and laughed when I realized they made a little triptych by accident. Plant what loves you. Inventory what you can carry. Stars don't ask for permission to be loud. That night, after the dishes and the baby's bath that turned our bathroom into a splash zone with better lighting, after a bottle that she tried to conduct like an orchestra, after work emails that I answered with one thumb and 0 apologies, I went out to the garden. The air was cooler, crickets gossiping in the dark. I tore open the milkweed packet and pushed seeds into the soil along the ragged edge of our plot. I didn't make a speech. I did tap the dirt once, a little benediction, because I'm still me. In the morning, my daughter pointed at the window and said a new word we hadn't rehearsed. "Sky," she said, the S catching on the edge of her newly toothy mouth. I touched the castle charm at my collarbone. We waved at nothing and everything. 2 houses down, a neighbor I barely know was already out with a trowel, kneeling in his own patch of insistence. Somewhere across town there's a bench that smells like lavender and rain with both our griefs planted shoulder to shoulder, not competing, just growing.